Hey, what's up, everybody? So, if you're new here, because we haven't done one of these in a couple weeks, this is the Steel Spirits podcast. Today, we're going to be going over our top five picks for all of our one-drop elestrals and our one-drop runes. Today, we got Red Baron, Moxie, and Eagles. So, starting with Red Baron, you guys want to introduce yourself, and we'll get going from there.
Yeah, electrolyzations. My first time on here, but hopefully I can give everybody some good info about the top 5 spots of each rune and elestral.
I think I'm next in that turn order.
Yeah, go.
Hi everyone, it's Moxie. I'm sorry I look a little weird. I have to be in a weird position today, but it's good to be back on the Still the Spirits podcast, and yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And I am Eagle the Duck of the same channel name, and I am very happy to be here and also find it kind of funny I'm doing a top 5 before I do my base set review, but finally the card's taking longer than anticipated, so we're doing a top 5 first.
Yeah, so let me drop the spreadsheet for everyone at home briefly to take a peek at. It would help if it's in the front layer so they can actually see it. But so basically, we all kind of answered our top five. Everything kind of has a point system, as you'll see. We're just going to kind of go through our list and talk about it. So we're going to start with the one drops. So kind of honorable mentions. We have Tadpuff, Foamy, and Bob. So they all showed up on our list, but all fairly low on one person's list each. Personally, I think Tadpuff and Foamy kind of have the same role. They're both kind of like engines to get you to things, but Foamy's a little bit more utility. Bob is the weird one out, in my opinion. So, Baron, why'd you pick Bob?
All right, so, well, you will probably disagree with me on this, but I think Bob will see a lot of action in a lot of decks, especially decks that don't fare too well with back row. In my personal opinion, I think it's a tad bit better than P-Gust. The fact that it can freeze the back row and 2 of them for 1 cost is very strong. I think it'll help decks like Volt Tempest. I think, well, I mean, Volt Tempest has Thunderstorm and everything, but it'll be good. Personally, I run P-Gust, but I would take those out for the Bob. And then it would help your like decks like Leonite Lockdown, where Leonite negates all invokes, but is super weak to back row. So I think it won't be played in every deck, like Mono Green won't play it because it has equal links. But for decks that have trouble with the back row, I feel this card would be played a lot, and definitely we'll see a lot more use of Bob.
Yeah, like I think Go Tall decks is where Bob kind of fits into, but I feel like you would just run like other rune removal in its place. It's a little bit weird. I don't know. It's a weird spot.
No elemental synergies.
See, I think it can definitely be used for wide as well. I think it's not just a tall deck.
I think that like, so seeing what is its actual name? Chillatl?
Chill-a-lotl.
Because it's chilling. It's chilling a
Oh
lot.
yeah, Chillatl.
Chill-a-lotl.
Chillatl.
Yeah.
It chills a lot.
It's a mouthful to pronounce.
It's a name.
It's just Bob.
But so like Bob its effect is interesting. What I want to see. Remember how we were like talking about the cracking combo?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because like what I've been noticing, I think Earth is the only one that doesn't do this, but with a lot of people just play a full back row on turn 1 through 3, and they just have like a ton of runes face down. Seeing that like combo of, okay, I'm gonna play 2 Bobs, and then you just can't use your back row. But I think without like, because he has nothing to protect him, his stat line isn't the best. I think the removal of a rune or the destruction of a rune is more important at this stage in the game. But I mean, it's definitely gonna be an interesting tech card. I think we'll see it in a few decks where it's just like, oh, they're gonna P-Gust my guy, get bobbed, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's annoying.
Yep.
So
it's going to be a good, I think, card just to kind of surprise your opponent. Just be like, oh, you thought you were going to shield my Volt Tempest? No, Chillatl.
Well, that's where it's going to be good in, and I think you just briefly mentioned, but someone talked over you. There's no synergy for Frost in set 1 because it doesn't exist in set 1 except for Bob. So it's going to be hard to properly use, which I don't there's why I don't think it's going to see more than like a one of, maybe two of in much taller decks and wider decks, because wider decks have better things to be doing. I think
They can afford it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the how I view the card is I think it has a lot of potential, but right now it's one of those cards that just helps you secure you being ahead.
Yeah, but
It helps. It helps
It's
at your
fun.
tempo though. If you're ahead, it keeps you
Yeah.
ahead.
It does
Yeah.
keep you ahead. But
Yeah, it
And
does.
it's
one of
like
those things, I think it might be more of a win more card.
yeah. Well,
I
while
think
we're
right
on
now, for the
the
most part, we win
kind
more.
of go wide topic, we could probably actually go into our actual number 5 now, which is Viserys. So Viserys is the 1 Earth 4/2. When this Viserys gains 1 attack for each Viserys on the field, including itself. When this Viserys destroys an celestial in battle, you can special cast a Viserys from your hand or deck in defense. Now, the only person that put this on their list was Jacob, or Eagle the Duck, and he put it at number 2, which means it just edged out most of the other picks. So Jacob, why don't you start out? It's your pick, so why don't you start with what you think about it?
Okay. So the reason I put it at 2 was because I was trying to balance out like the power of the card versus also just kind of impact on the game, some competitive viability. And I think Viserys is the perfect example behind Sorlet of just a really powerful card by itself that also will definitely see competitive play, at least at first, because it has the added benefit of going wide, which in my opinion, is still objectively better than going tall as of right now. It has that 5 attack stat line, which I think is huge. It can only get bigger. And also the fact it doesn't require any other cards. It is independently good of everything else. And because it's so offensive in nature, I think at least early on, that's going to be more optimal. It's easier to learn. It's benefited by the rules more. And I think it's just an easier deck it's one of those decks because it's so easy to use, it will just generally see a bit more play, at least at the beginning. So to me, that just marks a really powerful card in this game, and hence why I put it at the number 2 slot.
Yeah, it's definitely like part of the engine that really makes like Mono Earth kind of beatdown strategy work, because when it does destroy something, it does destroy something and plops another one of it down. Now it's in defense, but now your opponent breaks the defense one. You still have one in attack position, so they can do it again. So it does kind of snowball. So I do see that, but at the same time, part of the reason why I didn't put it on my list is because Poison Tipped and Shield are so ubiquitous. Tsunami is in so many decks that if you're playing to try and snowball with Viserys, you can get shut down pretty quick. And the Earth Engine is pretty resilient, but it can kind of pitter out if you stall for like a couple turns on it. So I just barely didn't put it in my list. It was gonna be my 5th, and then it kind of got pushed down a little bit. But it is very good, so I think it's reasonable that it's number 5 here.
I like it because you can splash. It's not, you don't have to chant it with an earth spirit. So it's like, but it kind of like, if you do something like, oh, I want to do this setup for next turn and equip it with like a fire, it's a really super telegraphed move. They're like, oh, here comes the flash.
I don't know why you're missing. Oh,
If you're splashing into a deck,
yeah.
Like,
I
thought of like just splashing Viserys in a deck and just see how it worked, because it's technically a 5/2. So it's like you summon a 5/2 beater that replaces itself, or like gets another copy of it out, so you can set it for next turn. I always thought about doing that.
You play like 2 Viserys in a deck. You play the first Viserys, kill something, get the second Viserys misenchanted. Then you have 2 5/2s.
But like I said, it's telegraphing your next move, and
they're going most likely for the defense one anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the reason. Do you mind if I go real quick? Yeah.
I was gonna. Go, Jake. Go ahead, Jake.
Okay. So the reason I didn't really kind of I did consider the counter runes, but the reason I didn't really use it to kind of weigh this card is because the counter runes kind of affect everything.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was the most fair to maybe dock this one down, because it's still powerful. It's still going to force your opponent to use the counter runes as well. And that to me is another sign that it's a strong card, that your opponent wants to counter rune it. I mean, you are still getting value out of it.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say was, I guess when I was thinking of my list, I was thinking of more like future, right? Like what the meta is becoming, or like the competitive scene is becoming. And I think Viserys is a very strong card. It's a very interesting card, but like Wirtz was saying, it's very easy to stop. And it's the same with the Bears, right? Like The bears, it's unique, it's different, it's fun, and they replace themselves, but they're not like good in any sense. And I think what makes Viseros good is the cards that help it. Like yeah, it's nice to be able to like summon it again, but you know when you run into things like that just stop it, um, it just it's a feels bad moment, and then you're if that's your deck's engine and they can stop your engine, then you're just it's even worse. So I was like, well, Earth Beaters, okay, you have this, you have that, you have this, and then you have Viserys. And it's like, oh, well, okay. I think if like there's stuff that's made that, you know, I think with a fully forest, Viserys is terrifying.
Oh yeah.
With
Yeah.
forest, that card is it's terrifying. That is nightmare fuel. But without it, it's not too hard to get around. So it like that's why I think like Viserys is. I didn't put him on my list because the cards that support him are what make him scary. Without that, he's just a good.
I mean, I think he really enables a lot of go wide, and the good part about go wide is if you do dodge that first counter rune, and you're going wide, you're gonna have 3-4 elestrals on your board that are all threatening in this deck.
Yeah.
So I think the mono earth beat strategy is just the straight up like the tempo deck right now of just you kind of hit the board, get running. If you dodge the first couple of pieces of removal, then your opponent just has to kind of either pull something really really good out or just kind of risk playing further into the tempo, and then you just drop another Viserys down, you drop Dick Taurus down. Now you got a bunch of 8-9 attackers that even if you get to your 2-drop, it just says I'm taller, I'm bigger, like, and I got 4 of them.
Yeah.
So
I had 2 responses to what you said, Moxie, because I do think you are right. Moving forward, this card won't be as powerful. I was thinking more in the context of base set, but I totally see that come set 2, we're going to get more cards on the same power level as this. So it's going to kind of get edged out. But the other comment I had was Earth is a really, I think, hard element to judge because it's just a bunch of good cards. And because it's a bunch of good cards, the deck is at least great right away. So I do think over time we will see it be less potent. I just can't deny that it on paper just seems like a really powerful card because of everything it does. Just by
at the moment, it's definitely very fairly strong. I agree. Like
Remember when we thought fire was gonna be insane, guys? And
fire is still good. All right, but why don't we move on now to our next lad? So we're gonna jump into Aphros now. So Aphros, let's see. Moxie, you put it number 2. Baron, you put it at number 4. So we got 6 points, edging into 4th place. So Moxie, you put this as number 2. It also barely didn't make my list, but since you put it at number 2, let me know what you think about it. Why did you put it at number 2?
So, in terms of all of the Nexus cards, I think out of all of them, Kinleo and Aferos are the like top contenders for me. And the reason why is because if you get 2 Aferos on the field, you feel great. Like 2 Aferos on the field is a bad time.
A lot of the time with water, it's not necessarily if you get 2 Aphros in the field, it's when.
It's when, yeah, because water ramp is just it's nuts.
It's just foamy, and like if you open foamy Aphros in your opening hand, you're almost guaranteed to get 2 Aphros on turn 2.
Exactly. So that's why, and it's because like I guess I kind of defeated my argument with the Viserys, where it's like there's a lot of cards that get Aferos to the field very quickly. And or just playing it, and the passive ability to just Nexus draw, and be able to go through your deck that fast is super nice, because a lot of the draw cards, right, are Nog, drop, stuff like that, where it's like it is requiring you to play a rune or take that time. With Aferos, it's just I'm just gonna Nexus.
They also cost life. Whereas Aphros theoretically
with Aphros it's just boop boop. I'm just moving stuff. So I think it's just such a good like ability that is partnered well with the deck that it's put in. That's why I put it up there, is because I was thinking, okay, what are the strongest cards in the game right now? And the passive, like the ability to just passively draw cards every turn without hurting yourself, is I think really good.
I did also bear in mind, I don't have the new image because we don't have it yet. It did just get nerfed where it's you draw per every water nexus, not just always draw 2. But theoretically, you have Poseidon or maybe a Trident in hand, so it's not too
And
big
you're
a
still
cost.
doing 2.
I think
Yeah.
even with the nerf, right?
It's
Because it's like
still free
draw
draw.
2 card. Yeah,
draw.
it's like even draw 2 is like, okay, I'm not drawing 2. I'm just not gonna deck myself out as fast. Because there's sometimes where like I play a Pharaohs and I'm kind of wishing I don't have to draw 2, because that second card is like, oh, I didn't need you yet, or something like that. But I mean, it's whatever. And then if you have 2 on board, it's like, oh, I'm drawing 2 anyways.
Yeah,
So it's like
still
cool.
a lot of
Good
draw
time.
power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're like most of the times you're still drawing 2 anyways. So I don't think this nerf actually does much to Aphros. It gives you the option to just do 1 if you don't want to overextend. But my reasoning for Aphros was pretty much the same as Moxie's. I think out of all the nexuses, like if you put like doubles of all nexuses out on the field, the only ones that actually make sense, that actually do combo off a lot, are you're looking at Exaltair and you're looking at Aphros. Exaltair, you'll be able to get 4 damage, but Aphros is just like, I'd rather get hand size. Hand size is so valuable. I'd rather have hand size over damage in the long term. Hand size gives you options, and just having 2 Aphroses on the field, just like it seems like you'll just like never lose with that. And if you just protect them, you're just like, okay, I'll do this for a second turn. In terms of like where they sit in the current meta, it's hard. Like water, it's really hard to get like a really decent water deck, I feel like. But this, like, my image of the future was like this card could be its own engine. Like somehow in the future it creates its own draw engine. You're just drawing, and then you get to your main part of your deck. So I was like, this is, and where it doesn't cost anything like Nog or drop. You're just you draw power for free. So those are my thoughts on Aphros.
Jacob, what are your thoughts on Aphros?
See, I do agree that has a lot of potential, but I really don't like it right now because I understand the allure of free draw, but what are you doing with it? That's the big issue I've had. So I think it has a lot of potential right now, but again, I was kind of also in mind with the context of set 1. I think Aphros just misses the mark there partially because of the cards that support it right now, but also because I've seen games where they can net a lot of cards. I've seen games where it's been successful. I've seen games where my opponent just doesn't do anything with those cards and they end up losing. And then I've also, there's a third point. It was the train kept moving on another thought. So that was it. It was that there's also the chance that, especially with this change where you can only draw 1, if you don't see your cards to protect your Afroses, let's say the scenario you flew into one off of foamy and then enchant 1. If you don't see any way to protect them, you drew cards, but you're losing out on tempo here. Right. So you're still up, but it's just a matter of, I think it's a bit too varied in its power level right now because it's completely dependent on those cards. So that's why I say in the future, it's going to be great as you get better cards, better synergies, and you want that free draw. But I think for right now, it seems a lot stronger than it is in practice.
Yeah, I mean, in the future, it'll help protect itself better when you have more options for your draw to protect yourself. It's like, when you can run 3 tsunamis, 3 shields, 3 of, some other option, you can potentially use this draw to protect itself, but that is also a little bit of a gamble.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why I didn't get it in my top 5, even though I love the card, and multiple times I've gotten 2 in play, and it's just like, oh, let me draw 4 every turn. Okay, I got 16 cards in hand, drop all my shields, drop all my tsunamis, protect it. But it can also whiff pretty hard.
Yeah,
so,
currently.
But I think it's going to be a card that's consistently going to be on people's radars for just potential, maybe combo draw stuff, or just like like if you need to.
We're looking at set two type strategies.
Yeah.
If there's ever like some kind of like a 1 turn like 5 card combo that you need to find all 5 cards to win the game with, I think Aphros slots into that deck because you're just looking for 5 specific cards to win the game.
That because
that's way down the line. I know, but it's going to be a card that you kind of want to keep on your radar as like quote unquote free draw, and then the spirits that you use to get your free draw with, you can also then reuse to cast runes.
So that brings up a point with Aphros and a lot of the draw power that we're seeing, right? Is like a little off topic with it, but when are we gonna get a hand size? That's my question.
gosh.
Because like if I can draw like 14, 15 cards in a turn and sit with like 10 in my hand after playing 5, it's like
We'll see.
See, I know MTG has a hand size, but what about Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh?
Pokemon doesn't, Yu-Gi-Oh does.
Yu-Gi-Oh does. Digimon doesn't. Vanguard doesn't. But Vanguard shouldn't.
Force
gonna get
of
into that.
Will does. I think Flesh and Blood does as well. Not 100% sure. I haven't played it much.
Yeah, and then
But
there's some
even
card
though you
games.
say that, I've never had sat on like 10 plus cards in my hand before.
I have.
So I was
I
like,
have multiple
you-
times with the King
Yeah,
combo
multiple
deck.
times.
Oh,
Yeah,
so just with
it
that
would-
combo, just that combo.
Yeah, but because I prefer combo decks. I don't like decks where I'm
Right.
like, I have a big creature, he go burr. I like to think. I like to have my puzzle pieces. So I'm sitting with like 13 cards in hand, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Like,
Pass.
All right,
Yep,
let's.
that's-
I think
exactly.
we
I have
all
one
got
more
a
comment.
what?
If you don't mind, I have one more comment about that.
Yep.
That's
and
why I
then
made
we'll
a
move on.
comment with Afros. It's just like you need something to do with that hand. And
Yeah.
I've seen
I
plenty
think-
of players
yeah,
who are just like value. I'm going to keep drawing cards, and I'm just like, and I always just edge at them out because, and afterwards I'm just like, what were you trying to do with those cards? Or they'll be sitting there with a 10 card in, they're like, I don't know what to do. Let me
Yeah.
draw more cards. And it's just like,
Yeah,
how
that,
are you trying to win the game?
that's a
But
deck
once we get a
construction
way to win the
issue.
game,
Yeah.
once we get a way to win the
Yeah.
game, a good way with that, Afros is going to be nuts because it's going to be a great stall card to get
Well,
Yeah,
install
yeah.
these value. That's what
We'll
I'm
just
gonna
get
Yeah,
the
I completely agree with that.
yeah, we'll just get the Angel card from Shadowverse where it says if you deck out, you win the game.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So
That's what Elestrals needs. It just needs another Jace.
Yeah, exactly.
all right.
We just need a
So
Jace.
I guess we'll move on to number 3 now, which is our lovely Sorlet. Now, actually, I thought Sorlet came in a little. I thought Sorlet would be like
No, it's
number 1 or
Kinleo.
2, but Sorlet's a
Kinleo.
5-1.
Kinleo's third.
Kinleo's third.
Kinleo's third. Yeah,
Oh,
Kinleo's third.
Kinleo is third, right? Because we have 6. My bad.
Yes.
Kinleo. Never mind. I know
Yep.
my list. I can read. It's right in front of me. I swear. All right,
It's third from the top. It's understandable.
Kinleo.
This card's
Alright.
nuts.
Now we have it right. All right, so Kinleo, it's 3-1 for 1 fire. Same thing as Afros. You can nexus up to 2. When you do, you can destroy an opponent's Elestral. So Moxie had this number 1. I had this number 2, which gave it 9 points to come into third. So Moxie, why don't you start? You have the highest rating on it.
This card's nuts. This card is so good. Like, think of all of the destruction we have at set 1 going into set 2, right? Kinleo is so good. It's a stick that destroys. And pretty much every time you play it, you're gonna kill something. If you're playing Kinleo and you're not gonna kill something, why are you playing Kinleo? Don't play Kinleo. You wait to play Kinleo. And then you play Kinleo and it's like, oh, you know that like 6 turns you spent getting the, Vol Tempest out or your whatever out, it's dead. My
Well,
tiny
you-
little line says, well, I know, but that's what I meant is like you get this big creature out and it's like, oh, this is amazing. And then you're like, no, my tiny stick says no. And it just feels so good because not only are you, most of the time, the way I've seen Kinleo played, especially now because we're in like the 1-drop meta, right? Is you'll play Kinleo and then you'll be, normally I've seen it played with Hephaestus where you're getting like 4 onto Kinleo the turn it's played. So you're killing whatever is going to block it anyways, and then you're hitting your opponent in the face for 4.
3.
For
3,
You're
sorry.
pressing 2 over.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3. So you're hitting your opponent in the face for 3. And it's like, that feels way too good and way too strong. Because like that's why I think like Kinleo is just like not only the best Nexus card, but I would consider him one of the best cards in set 1 right now. Like if I'm playing fire in my deck, I'm playing Kinleo.
So
So
the reason I have it so high is not necessarily just because it's that removal on the stick, but because it fits in both your aggressive strategy where you can play it aggressively, destroy their only defender, and hit for 3, and that's a really aggressive play. But you can also play it in slower strategies where you can plop it. If you can protect it, you can reuse it, and if you reuse it, if you can protect it, it's a threat that your opponent has to deal with. and if they don't deal with it right away, it's going to constantly generate near free value. With the caveat, as all the Nexus Celestials have, is you need to have either a Divine Rune or something else in play to use it, which does limit it a bit, which is why it's not really my number one.
So,
but I do like
to
that it's usable in multiple decks of both aggressively and defensively. Yeah, Max?
to that, I was gonna say no. We have Infurix now.
I mean, we've always
And-
had Infurix.
Well,
Not
no,
always,
but
but
what I'm saying is like once Infurix got released, that card got so much stronger because Infurix is a card that doesn't care if it dies. It's going to the grave. So if you don't have the access to Hephaestus, if you don't have your Forge, if you don't have whatever, and you have Kinleo on the field, right? Like let's say your opponent, your plan was to do Hephaestus and Forge. You just go, okay, well, I have an Infurix in hand. My enchant for the turn is Infurix. I'm gonna Nexus off of my Infurix, kill your creature, hit you for damage. At the end of your turn, my Infurix is coming back.
it's
Not
a
anymore,
slight change in
but
Infurix.
Well,
It has to
yeah.
return the turn it gets sent, but yeah,
Yeah.
Infurix allows you to
that's-
kind of
yeah.
re-stick like a spirit on board. It's expensive though. But
No, yeah, it
Baron
is
and Eagle,
expensive.
you guys don't have Kinley on your list at all. What are you guys' thoughts on it?
I can go first if you're still thinking Baron.
Go for it.
Okay. So the reason I didn't put Kinley on my list is because I just felt there's a lot more potential in all the cards I listed. While Kinleo is really good, I feel like its value is very well known. And it's also still very punishable by, I would argue more punishable than like Viscerus by counter runes and such, especially shield and poison tip, not so much, but like shield.
Poison Tip
because you're
does
stacking so many
do
spirits.
some work because it does force you to generally Nexus off of it with Poison Tip as opposed to
Yeah.
onto it.
Yeah,
But,
true.
yeah.
I mean, you can still do a lot of spirits with it as well. Oh,
Yeah.
it's actually it's only just play cost. I don't know why I was thinking it was more, but yeah.
Yeah.
So shield and poison tip, even tsunami, I think hurts it because it only has one defense. So I think it's just very easily punishable. I think the best way to describe it was I just feel like all these cards have so much more value, and Kinleo's is just very well known offensively and defensively, and it's just going to kind of stay that value as well. It's good. I just didn't think it had that kind of little extra to it that really needed to make it into the top 5 list. And like I can even make an argument for why Equal Links in some scenarios is better than Kinleo because you actually get rid of those counter runes and can still easily hit over stuff in Earth. So that's kind of why I didn't put it there.
I'm surprised
well.
Equalinks didn't make a single dent in our list, actually.
I was almost going to put it there, but I felt like Viscerus was just a bit stronger of a
Mhm.
card overall. It's just, again, that argument of Earth has so many great stuff. What do you really put there? And I think on paper, Viscerus is just a bit stronger than Equal Links.
And Baron, what are your thoughts on Kinleo?
Kinleo, I'm not gonna lie, it's I like the card. It's strong. But sometimes, like at the end of the day, when I think about the Nexuses, like with Nia, and Kinleo, I was like, but maybe it's because I haven't run Fire enough. The fact that you do need something to Nexus off of it to get that removal going, because compared to like you have Earthquake, you have PTA, you have Shield, which are more immediate removals. Well, of course they're traps, so you have to wait a turn. But compared to Kinleo, where you have to actually have a 2-card combo in order to get the removal, I just thought they were just a tad bit better. Now he definitely makes like it was like 6 or 7 spot. He just barely didn't make it. But for those reasons, I just didn't put him in my top 5.
Just kind of clarifying as well, I feel like Earth has a lot easier time running Nexus targets for Equal Links than Fire does for Kinleo. It feels like the
Yeah, it was
targets
like
work better in Earth than in Fire.
Well, because like
And-
Polyforce does a lot more work in Earth than Volcanic Forge does in Fire, so you do have
Scythe is searchable.
one extra option. Well, so is Hammer of Hephaestus and Hephaestus. Like that kind of searches out a bunch of
That's
stuff
true.
too. And you could splash Sprouter in a Fire kind of control deck in a sense. You know, get a big body on board, and then next turn you play Kinleo with whatever you searched and do that. So
Yeah.
you have
I-
options.
I guess how I
I've
was
seen
looking at it. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I've also seen a lot of instances where people, I feel like they're kind of like misplaying Kinleo a little bit. Like they'll have their they'll have Hephaestus out, and then and I'll have 2 remain after you ditched one, disenchanted one to go get your hammer. They'll still have 2 on there, so they'll try to go for big damages immediately. So the remaining 2 spirits will go to Kinleo, Whereas I would just put one onto Kinleo, destroy one back row, and then probably try to save your Kinleo for next
Yeah,
turn, and then back to your Hephaestus, and then kind of like Nexus back and forth.
In my opinion, that's the way you should play Kinleo. Like I know it's alluring to be like, damn it.
Big damage.
I think if it's early on in the game, yeah, big damage is way better because it kind of puts your opponent on a back foot. Typically, they won't have a rune or two down, and you can kind of get away with it. Yeah. If you see they have a back row like set, I would say it's more beneficial for you to just do the one hit for a smaller amount of damage. It's still a pretty decent sized damage, but a smaller amount of damage. And I hate the people that search the hammer and put it on Kinleo. I hate it. I don't understand why people do it.
To protect your Kinleo from their Kinleo.
Yeah. Oh, I can't be affected by elestrals. Ooh, there's like not a lot that are played in the meta right now. I hate it.
It gets increased to like what, 4 attack? I mean, I guess if you like
with Hephaestus,
I guess
5.
2, 3 to
with Hephaestus, it would be 5. With Hephaestus on board, it is 5 attack. So what I would say is like if they have 2 elestrals on field, you kill one and the other one is like Sorlet, right? Then that makes sense. But if there is no other Elestral on the field, why are you searching hammer? If it dies, so does the hammer. Like,
well, you search hammer and hold it in your hand for when it's actually usable and necessary.
That's
what that's true. It's all about tempo, so it's like sometimes it's okay to go for the big damages, but you just got to keep the tempo on your field. Keep Kinleo as scary as possible, so you're forcing your opponent to deal with it. So set Kinleo, only Nexus 1, destroy a creep Elestral, set a couple back rows to try to protect it, and then next turn you go off again, and depending on the board state, you can like Nexus the rest of it off, or I don't know, you can do something. But there's no reason to blow up your Hephaestus just to make Kinleo bigger.
But no, yeah, I think Kinleo, that is a good point. Like right now, Kinleo doesn't have a lot going for it because it needs that 2-card, 3-card combo to be able to play it effectively. But I think that's like the difference in where we were thinking with these lists. I was thinking more for like future sets and like where it's going to be in general. I think going into the next sets, like getting more fire cards. If we get anything that sticks on board, Kinleo is going to be a nuisance. So
some viable fire searchers. Can we get some like fire searches, and then like get special summon Kinleo from our decks? That'd be great.
What Moxie was saying is kind of how I was thinking of the card is for the future. It's going to be a really powerful card, and since we're in a more of a 1-cost meta, I do think that is the reason why Kinleo for me wasn't as powerful. Because of course, once we see more 2 and 3 cost being Kinleo is going to be awesome, just an easy way to out them.
Windmill slam your Majesty and pass.
But I was just going to say that's why I was saying I don't know. I think I would almost rather have equal links higher than Kinleo because I think right now in the 1 spirit meta, it's better to deal with the cards that can slow down your tempo, the back row, and again with Earth you can just easily run over them anyway. And Kinleo most of the time with 3 attack, it's just going to get run over. It's so easily answered, or your opponent's just going to shield it, and probably not shield it. Well, they could shield it, but poison arrow. So that's kind of the difference for me. But future, I totally agree with you, Moxie. It's definitely a card to keep an eye on.
I think all the Nexus cards will definitely increase in potency. Majority.
Sadly, I don't think Spark It will. As much as I love Spark It, I love the discard. I love discard and mill, even though everybody. Why was all of the discard printed in water? I don't understand.
You can washing away their hand.
I guess. I asked Dan, hey, can I get more discard? Here's some elephants.
Yeah, like hand knowledge is great. I love hand knowledge. Hand knowledge wins games, but like unless there's more like cards that synergize with Spark It, and like you'll be like, oh, I want to make you discard 4 cards in 1 turn. If I draw this specific combo, I'm just be like, it's okay.
Before we get a little too much off topic, let's move on to now we're actually moving on to number 2 because we have a tie for first. So number 2, now we're on Sorlet. 5/1 for 1 wind. You can expend 1 wind in order to change position of the Elestral, target Elestral, unless it's wind enchanted. So Jacob has this at number 1. Moxie has this at number 5. Baron has this number 2, and I have this number 5. So this is the first card that we all unanimously have on our list. So who wants to start with this one? Because we all agree it's good.
I think Jacob should, since he thinks it's the bee's knees.
So the reason I put it again is just looking at set 1, not so much the future. I still think it has a lot of future viability, but right now I feel like this card just has so much going for it in this one meta where it can easily hit over anything by easily swapping from attack or defense, and I don't think there's really enough wind where you're going to have issues with it not being able to switch stuff unless your opponent really is trying to counter you. And then just the 5 attack is just great. I think it's probably the most versatile card, one spirit Elestral right now that we'll probably see play in a competitive deck. So that's why I put it at number 1, just for set 1. I do think, again, kind of like this, we're going to see more cards kind of power creep so it doesn't feel as good. It's just going to feel more even come set 2. But for right now, I just think it's probably the best card.
Yeah, so part of the
Go for
reason why I have it in top 5 but low top 5 is because if there's a lot of Sorlets out there, Sorlet doesn't answer Sorlet as easily as Sorlet answers anything else. So the more wind you see, like with the Hydrakes, Pentaers, stuff like that, it can potentially just be a 5-1 vanilla in some matchups, especially if the top decks are all kind of like Sorlet, like fire, maybe kind of aggro stuff. Half the cards you're not really going to be able to affect the Sorlet, and if you're playing other wind decks, they can misenchant to dodge the Sorlet. So it's insanely good. I'm worried that wind enchant caveat diminishes it a little bit. So that's why it's not higher on my list.
I'm gonna have a counterpoint to that. I'm just thinking like at least early meta when we're probably going to see like a lot of Earth with Stadium. Even if your opponent tries to throw out a wind to try to counter Sorlet, and you have a Sorlet that wouldn't work on it, just throw like an Earth on it. If you have a Floyd Forest up or whatever Stadium, you can now hit over them.
Yeah.
So it still has that versatility.
That is true.
That's fair.
My thing with Sorlet is like my reason why it was so high is because side deck potential. If you're not running it, Sorlet is very splashable. It's a card that gets over. The only card that I struggle with when I play Sorlet is Ceres equipped with Staff of Demeter. That is the saddest situation you'll ever run into. You're like, oh, I'm gonna try to switch you to defense. No, you're not. It's a 5 defense Lestral, so it's like it's really sad. But it gets over majority of Lestrals of the creatures. So like having it in your side deck is very, very good, if not in your main deck.
So the reason I put it lower on my list, the reason I have it as number 5 is kind of similar to Wirtz, where it's like I think it's a very powerful card. Again, it has a lot of versatility, and Baron brings a good point where it's like it is a good like splashable card if you're playing a little bit of wind in your deck. But we are seeing more people look at wind, and especially with like because I've seen a deck floating around that like is utilizing Pentaroar and trying to make that like whole shtick work. When you're going against a wind deck, that card it's a good card. It's 5-1, but that's all it is. And it's like with like us seeing more 1-drops printed with better stat lines. Like we're seeing 1-drops printed with 5 defense. We're seeing 1-drops printed with, better attack and with fully forests on the field. Like sometimes even when you switch it to defense mode, or with the attachments, when you switch it to defense mode, it's like, well, sorry. I still have 5 defense.
I mean, but most things high defense have low attacks. You just leave it into attack.
Yeah. So you just switch it to attack mode. But like I think the thing is right. We're seeing more wind being played because it's getting, I don't know, it's just getting better than it was. And the reason I put it so low on my list is because there's not very many decks that play Sorlet now. I remember when Sorlet was like in a lot of the test decks that we were working with, like everyone was playing that card because it's like this card is great.
It's really good.
Yeah, but now I'm noticing like people are kind of like realizing, oh yeah, it's a good card, but if everybody's playing it, it's not that good. So
that's why I brought up the side deck. So it's like if you're like putting in your side deck, putting a few wind in your side deck, It's splashable in almost every deck. So if your opponent isn't running Wind, then it probably would be good to put it in your deck. If they are, you take it out of your deck.
Yeah,
That's just how it
I think we can all agree that if this card didn't care about things being wind enchanted, it would be like the best card in the game, bar
It'd be
none.
too good.
It'd be
too
really,
good.
really, it'd be way
Yeah.
too
It
good.
would be
So yeah,
Kind of since I was listening to you, I will say the other reason I defend me putting it at first is the fact that people are also trying to adapt to it, which shows how powerful it is as well. So I think it's going to be one of those that will probably like ebb and flow as more people try to counter it because they know it's a threat. Then we might see less of it, but as people start to see less of it, they might pull back a little bit, and then we'll see sort of pop
yeah,
back up.
it's a meta
So I think it's
shuffling
going to be
card.
a defining card.
Yeah,
It's when it's ubiquitous and a lot of people run it. You run a little bit less, and then when people start running less, you start running more. So it just shuffles around your decks a bit, and you kind of have to really think what are other people bringing consistently, which is good for the game. It means decks are going to constantly cycle what is good and what's not, but that's the only reason
people
why I
are,
put it a
really
little bit
adjusting
lower.
So yeah, from my perspective, for my list, that's just kind of what I was looking for like a top list for set one. But I do think all of you have really great points because I do think it's important to highlight all of us had different philosophies going into building this top 5 list for sure.
Yeah. All right. So we all agree with Sora. Let's move on to the next card that I believe shows up on everybody's list as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it does.
Yep.
All right. So we're gonna move on to Riceros. So Riceros. Let me pull up the card art because I want to be able to read it so I don't get something wrong. All right. So Riceros is tied for first. So we'll start with Riceros just because no rhyme or reason. The 1-cost Thunder 2/4. As long as this Riceros is enchanted, elestrals cannot attack the turn they are cast unless they are Thunder enchanted. So Jacob has this on 4th, Moxie has this on 3, Baron has this on 3, and I have this at 1. So I'll start this off since I did pick it for my top card. So it stops attacks in most cases, but part of the reason why it's my number 1 because even if, let's say, you play it and your opponent's playing Thunder, they have Thunder in their deck, all the Thunder 1-drops can't get over this, so they're required to misenchant either a Necrof or a Sorlet to get over this with an attack, or have multiple cards in hand at the start of the game to get over it right away, which makes it a really, really strong stall card that you just can't answer effectively even when you're in the Thunder element because you don't have big enough things by themselves in Thunder. You're required to misenchant or do multiple cards to get over it right away to stop it. And that leads your opponent into getting something like a Sonicore out right away or some other additional support for Thunder. Maybe they drop in a Boom Bat and they can find a way to like recycle the Boom Bat a couple times so you just keep picking down your opponents, which I've had done in a game where I played Riceros. Turn 1, turn 2 I've played Boom Bat. Turn 2 I also Nexus from a Zeus I placed down with Circle of the Sky onto Boom Bat, and my opponent could never attack me because every turn I just cycled the Boom Bat and destroyed something, disenchanted, destroy something, disenchanted, destroy something. So it leads into a really stally position that you can't answer efficiently without Earthquake or Laurels or something just really premium in a sense, or multiple cards. That's why I put it in my like best card in the 1-drop spot. But apparently you guys all agree it's strong. I want to know why you guys think it's strong or what its weakness is at. So I guess who had the next highest? Moxie and Baron, you guys both had it at 3, so if one of you guys want to take it over.
You can go ahead, man.
Sure. I agree. Riceros is a very good card, but I've run into I guess because you were saying people have to misenchant in order to get over it. I've run into several. That's a Spirit deck issue. I feel like Spirit decks should have a variety of cards in it to prevent stuff like Riceros, Eruption, so on and so forth. I've had multiple occasions when I played Jacob, where he would just misenchant. He's like, "You have Riceros on the field. I don't care." Misenchant and attack over it. Oh, it feels bad.
Yeah.
I was like, but you are correct when you say there's very little cards that actually can get over it naturally. It just feels bad. Like when you go against something like a mono Earth deck where they have nothing but buffs that they use is Spasmeters, Foloys, and I feel like I can get over Rhysterios fairly easily. For any other deck, Rhysterios is very solid. It stalls for a turn, allows you, for Voltempest decks, allows you to go into Griffuse fairly easily. Turn 2, Griffuse, then go into Voltempest. Very easy combos. And then, of course, if they do try to misenchant, usually have back row to prevent them from doing so. But yeah, Rhysterios, very solid card. Very good card.
Yeah, I think Rhysterios is just one of the few cards, because like the only other card that does that is Floracne, and it's a 2-drop. And it's slow.
I've tried to run both in a deck, and
So
it just doesn't.
It just doesn't work.
Barely doesn't work.
Yeah. But I think like there is something beautiful about having like having the ability to just go, cool, you have summoning sickness until you kill this thing.
Yeah.
And there are ways to protect your Rhysterios. There are ways to buff it. There are ways to there's ways to do it. And again, like I was thinking more going into set 2, where I think Thunder is one of the few like elements that have really good effects on their cards. But they just add something to the deck. Yeah. So I think we're probably gonna get stuff that buffs Thunder a little bit more, and Rhysterios is gonna be terrifying. Like you're gonna play Rhysterios. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. It's just nice. It would be nice to get buff cards because you're not really running Mount Olympus.
Yeah.
So I don't know any decks that actually run Mountain Olympus. It's like
I've seen a couple.
I've seen a couple.
Yeah. But like, I've seen like Rhysterios next turn into Jolton, play Olympus. You have 2 small biggie guys. Yeah. Yeah. But like, I think Rhysterios is, and plus it's so splashable. You just play Rhysterios in any deck, and it works because of its effect.
Any lower decks, you play it in like
played it in an aggro deck, and it feels bad.
So to play a little bit of Devil's Advocate, the most consistent like attack, like I have to attack now decks, are like Thunder Fire aggro, which means you can just misenchant your Necruff, and then Wind Thunder Voltempest, which you could just misenchant your Storlet. Yes. So that's like the Devil's Advocate thing of like 2 of the kind of attack now decks, and they want to get rolling. Run Thunder, which is unfortunate, but it still requires them to misenchant or at least draw the cards to misenchant in the first place. But exactly. Jacob, you need your turn. So what do you think?
Right. So I have to go help real fast. I'll be right back.
Okay. So the reason I put it at 4th is purely because I think right now in the meta, Rhysterios is not realizing its full potential. I think it's an insane card. It's one of like 3 cards that I would classify as a floodgate right now with like Floracne and Palos' Chariot Ride. And if you can get it to stick and slow down your opponent, get control of the board, it feels so good. You just have control. You have tempo. It is great. But if your opponent can out it, it does not feel great because you've just fallen pretty far behind. And again, the big things are Storlet and Necruff. Everyone's running to get over it. Just a Thunder Spirit, hit over it. And if you don't have a counter rune set, or if your opponent gets rid of it, that's like your only way to protect it. So I think it's just one of those, again, kind of, there's another card you all mentioned that I had the same opinion on. It was Aphros, where it's a powerful card. It's just not in the right meta right now for it to see its full potential. So that's why I put it lower, because it has that potential. It's really good when it works. I think it gets edged out by what's really meta right now.
Yeah, I think the future limiting factor of this card is going to be the fact that it doesn't do anything proactive. It's just a passive, okay, I hope you can't attack me now. And as we see more direct removal cards, like, right now we have Boombat, we have Kinlea, we have Earthquake, and we have Laurels. 3 of which hit Rhysterios on your first turn if you're going second. If we get more removal cards, even just bounce cards, it'll mean Rhysterios can see less play. So I don't necessarily think Rhysterios is in a bad spot going better. I think it's going to be consistently where it's at right now, if not get a little bit worse in the future. But it does, with its passive effect, stop a lot. I wish it had something a little bit more proactive, and that would keep it relevant further. But I think with a larger card pool, it will see diminished play because it's not proactive. And proactive cards generally get you into a better state because you can do something immediately rather than just I play this and hope it doesn't get answered. That's my
I
thought.
think that I partially agree with that. I think at the same time we might also see more deck variety, so I think it will also be meta dependent.
Yeah,
So if Right
that's fair.
Stars is popping up, we'll see a lot of those removal. But if Right Stars isn't popping up, we might see some decks kind of slack on it potentially, depending on what those removals are, and that's where Right Stars can really shine as well. So you said something else that I had a point on. So if someone else has a point, I'll think about it.
No, other than that, I think
Jeez.
we covered most of the Ricero, so we can jump into our other number one card. Might as well, right?
Yep, I
So
was going to say.
you remembered?
I don't remember.
All right, then it's not relevant anymore.
No, it's not relevant. I missed my chance. Let's talk about the rabbit.
All right.
Yep, Rabbit.
Let me pull it up for our viewers here. All right. So Rabbit, S-Rabbit, is a 2/5 for 1 Thunder. When this S-Rabbit receives 1 or more Thunder, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 of them to your hand, and shuffle the rest into your deck. So Rabbit, I think, was on all of our lists. It is number 1. It is. So Baron had this at number 1. Jacob had this number 3. Moxie had it number 4, and I had it number 3. So, Baron, why don't you take it off since you have it at first place?
All right, yeah. So I've been a big fan of Rabbit ever since it came out. And I'm glad it's gotten the buzz it did. It's a duality. It's great. It lets you set up for next turn. Allows you to search your deck for Thunder where like maybe you don't want to run Nog or don't want to run Drop. And now it has the defense to actually live. Now, what I've always wanted to do was like you can do this multiple times too because it's a receive effect. So you can like search twice if you have Circle of Skies. First, you'll receive it once, and you'll do its effect. And then if you're running Zeus at the same time, Circle of Skies, and you can do its effect again, potentially drawing up to 2 cards. Looking at 6, drawing 2, which is great in my opinion. It's there for the setup play. It more than likely will survive 1 turn because of its 5 defense now. I think it's great. Sure, it takes up your normal enchant, your cast. I guess we're now calling it your normal cast. But I believe this card will be the cornerstone of all Thunder decks. Especially now that look isn't correlated with search, and you no longer have to show your opponent what you took. That is great. It keeps your opponent guessing. You don't know what they took, and I think it's great. All around good card. Go Rabbit.
Yeah, that extra stat buff, the no longer reveal, it's just kind of like the 1-2 punch of just it's so good. Like looking at like 10% of your deck basically and picking 1 card is really good. 5 defense means it probably lives in most cases unless it's a Sorlet turn 1.
Which is
you could circle to it, you could Nexus to it, you can enchant slowly to it if you get really bricked out. Like it just does everything. Like why would you play Clovey? It's kind of like
yeah. Why would you play this card?
Yeah, this really, and it's not even just for Thunder. You could literally put this in any elements deck. Like you run like 2-3 Ash Rabbit and 1 or 2 Thunder just for that Ash Rabbit. Like any deck that's trying to be a little bit more defensive, it's an auto include right now. Like we don't have so many options for defensive and slower decks that Ash Rabbit's just an auto include. Even if you don't run any other Thunder, you make space for 1 or 2 Zaptor and 3 Ash Rabbit in your slower decks.
Technically, you could say it's better than a Nog. It practically is. I mean, well,
it's 50/50.
It depends on the hand size. Like you dig 3, draw 1 for 1. Maybe they're about the same strength.
Well, Nog doesn't require an enchant to get it in play, so it's
Nog is colorless.
It's a toss up. Sometimes one will be better than the other.
Yeah. I also put it at 3rd. Do you want to go first, Moxie?
Oh no, you can go first.
Okay. So I also put it at 3rd, notably over Riceros, because I think this card is an insane consistency tool. I will say though, I think people overestimate the top 3 search a lot of times. I don't think it's as good as people might put, but it's still good. Don't get me wrong, it's still good. But it's just a great consistency buff for any element. I think the 5 defense and not being able to show that information is huge. This card I think is nuts on turn 1. Just drop a 5 bind. We already see Arrowmare and Sprouter feel really good on turn 1 in defense. It's so hard to get over that number, and that's the main reason I put it over Astrabbit. Was I just think, over Rice Rose, is I think Astrabbit on turn 1 is more proactive and it's a bit harder to get over. It has all the same checks as Rice Rose and a few less answers to it. Instead of your opponent just being able to misenchant, they now have to buff most of their elestrals. I think the only exception would be like Molstation and like some Tat Puff shenanigans. So that's the big thing. And I remember my Rice Rose point, and it does actually fit in here, is just if you can't actually answer your opponent's Elestral on board with the Rice Rose, you give them an opportunity to now be able to attack. And Astrabbit, I feel like, deals with that a bit better with an actually higher defense as well. It's just that much harder to hit over. It's so weird because that one defensive point to me just makes it feel like it survives.
It also does replace itself, which is really nice. Like at worst, if it gets but at worst, it's like if it gets earthquaked or something because your opponent really needs to get over it, you've netted 0 like card. Like you still have the same amount of cards in hand theoretically.
And Spirit Advantage, you're 1 up on your opponent because your Astrabbit costs 1. They use 2 to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And now you don't have to worry about an earthquake.
Very, very good card.
The reason I put Astrabbit there is because the buff that it got, like giving it that survivability was crucial. Because now I don't feel bad when I play an Astrabbit. I play it and I'm like, cool, yeah, I got a draw. It's gonna die this turn. It's fine. Like now I'm like, I'm gonna play an Astrabbit, and unless they have a Soilet, he's gonna sit here for a while.
And you can grab counter runes now off his top 3 and not televise it. That's the big
thing. And then now that look isn't synonymous with search, being able to just grab my card and my opponent just be like,
so that's what's coming.
I grab a shield and they're like, oh, so the card you just played face down is shield. Like, you don't know. It's just like now it's like
you should get that card because I just
exactly. It's just like, I hated that look was synonymous with search. Now that it isn't, it's like that card actually feels great. Give me more cards that say look. I want Scry. Thank you.
I just felt like Astrabbit went from one of those cards where you look at it and you're like, I want it to be good. It's a great consistency card to now actually being what we all wanted it to be.
Yeah, well, I think it was always good. Now it's like
I never thought it was worth it, honestly.
I ran a lot of Thunder decks, and I found it very useful the majority of the time. But I only usually ran like 2 of them because late game it was rougher to play. Late game it still is a little rougher to play, but late game finding options when you know what the board state is also very nice to have. So it's a little bit of trade-off. It's like turn 3-4, playing an Astrabbit in defense isn't going to do a ton, but you might be able to find that answer you need a little bit easier, which is still relevant.
Your 2 cost, good to go, most likely.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of options.
Such a good card. Like, it's just everything combined is so nice.
Yeah, I feel like it just has that little extra potential, especially moving forward, that I want to see for this like top 5 list.
Especially being repeatable in one turn. Again, like Baron mentioned, like you circle. You know, if we get more Nexus cards. If you play like Altar in your deck, and it's a perfect thing to just Nexus to with Altar, and it's like, and now I'm also protecting it, and I get to find 3 more cards. It's a card that if we get more Nexus support, which we most certainly will eventually, it just gets stronger and stronger in those kind of decks, and I think it's going to make any potential future Nexus, like shuffling Nexus deck, like it's going to be the key engine in that kind of deck because it's the perfect bank to have. It's good defense, gets you some card advantage, you know, keeps replacing itself if it needs to. It's very good.
This is when we in set 2 when we get the like every element has had a divine rune and like an attachment, right? This is when Frost gives us like taunt from Hearthstone, and just like you have to kill this. Everything else is gonna survive. You have to deal with this.
That would be an interesting mechanic for Elestrals.
Just be like, here's my rabbit. Here's my 5 defense. All of your 1-drops can't kill it. I'm gonna give it taunt now, and we're just gonna be happy.
And Molstation crash.
Listen, okay. Who unironically plays that card?
Molstation?
I've actually splashed it in decks with no water.
I've
to
never
play.
thought of running
So
Station.
in some of
Neither
my
have I.
early Thunder Fire control stuff, like the conduit control stuff, I play Station because in matchups where they have cards to get over Riceros, I swap Riceros out with Station so they can no longer get over the 6 defense.
He's
It actually
That was
works.
early on though.
Yeah.
That was
Listen,
early on.
We'll
though.
see
This
what
is
we'll
what
see
I
if
would
it's
say.
still relevant, but
yeah,
it is a thing
what
you
I
can
would say.
do.
If I go to a tournament and we have that effect, right, and I play that on a rabbit, like he pulls out a Mustation game. Good talking. I'm gonna go play a side event now because you unironically play this crap. Like that is what's happening.
Are you always see some like random mumble jumble of
Yes.
that just happens to work? We're like, wait, why do you have this running in your deck? There's like one non-meta card that happens to get over not meta cards. I'm like, wait, what?
If
Yeah.
we see more Galaxy style effects, Station is
Yeah.
getting increasingly more relevant. Right now, I think Station
Galaxy
is
is
that
great.
like
I love
one
that.
of in your water deck to tutor out with your foamy ability to stop your opponent from hitting with their smaller things.
Yes.
Like, so it has a place. So Station is still relevant and does have a place to get over a rabbit.
Listen, I got the joke card, Mock Station, and even I think that card is bad. But I don't know. Yeah, I think
I
it's
feel like that's off topic. That's off topic.
yeah.
All right, so that is our top 5 for our Elestrals. We have runes to go over now. And the rune list, I think, is a little bit easier to go over than the Elestral list because there's a lot more. There's a lot more kind of agreement here. So briefly, I'm gonna group the bottom 5, like 5th place and down together. So 5th place had 3 cards, between Earthquake, Apple, Tsunami, and then Thunderstorm's also in there. So we might as well just kind of briefly go over it. So these are all effectively removal cards except for Apple. I have a feeling that Moxie threw Apple in there because he's an Apple stan.
No, I actually have a reason for it. It's
Okay.
not just the fact that it's one of my favorite cards.
And I think we all agree like Earthquake's good because it's just easy removal. Tsunami's just non-targeted, tap things down, not a lot of water being played right now. And Thunderstorm, I do like Thunderstorm as well. I think it's a really proactive rune, but it is kind of expensive. But I want to know why Apple is tied for 5th.
Okay.
Moxie.
So here's what I would say, right? Apple, and again, keep in mind everyone at home and my compatriots here. I was thinking for the future. I wasn't thinking like currently. Because right now Apple is there's not a lot of decks that I think run Apple to its full extent. You because discard doesn't have a lot of like love. And yeah, a lot of the synergy is in water, and they're not very good discard cards.
And Humbuss just got
Yeah, and Humbush just got like super nerfed.
Yeah, well, right now it's only homes right now are like Water Thunder discard, which is seeing like barely any play at all right now.
Yeah,
and Fruit, which Fruit is strong,
Fruit's
but
fun.
it's very what's the word? Inconsistent. Fruit can pop off and be insane, or Fruit can just you fail to find Ambrosia, you fail to find Apple when you need it, and it does nothing.
So I think the reason that I put it there is because I have faith that Dan will give us good discard support. I have faith. And Dan, I know you're going to watch this.
To get this far in, though.
If you're this far in and we're talking about Apple, I swear to God, if you give me another elephant, I will destroy you. I can't, dude. I just can't.
What if he gives you a peanut?
Yeah. It gives me a rune, peanut, search and ivory. It's useless to me. They're useless cards. Anyway. But I think that Apple, like in the future, if we get good discard support, will be like because like I've toyed around with it with Ampup, right? Where like you search the Ampups and then you have Apple with Ampup fodder, and then I've unironically played Lycavolt a couple of times and seen
amazing.
Lycavolt can be very powerful.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is like with the Ampups,
buff. Sorry,
like
they're the buff. Yeah.
The buff, yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like with stuff like that, Apple is a very good combo piece. and allows for some shenanigans that you would not be able to do without it. I think in terms of now, no, Apple is not one of the better cards. It's a fun, like I said, it's a fun combo piece. In Fruit, it allows for some shenanigans, and Like Evolve
In
allows for some
Fruit, it's
shenanigans.
insane. Because in Fruit, what it says, if you get Lotagon out, it's
Yeah.
1 cost, discard a card from your opponent's hand at random, mill them
And you
2,
destroy a
and
card.
destroy a card for
Yeah.
1.
But
It's
you also need to
nuts.
have the hand size. That's the reason why I didn't really like Apple to begin with, is because like you need your hand majority of the time. And Lestrals right now, like hand power is really strong. So to give up cards, like I mean, of course you have Amp Up, whose only
Whose
there
only
to-
objective is to die.
and it's like it reminds me of Rick and Morty. It was like, what is my duty? Your duty is to be discarded. Oh.
Yeah.
It's like that's what Amp Up is. It's
But
like,
so
yeah.
what I would say to that, right, is like now that we have like with Fruit, right? I play Rise. I have Rise sideboarded in that. And
Yep.
the reason why
I play
is
2 main deck in Fruit.
you play 2 main deck.
Mhm.
I play 1 main deck. But like with that, right? It's like if we get more like revival cards, your hand kind of becomes synonymous with your underworld at a certain point.
Yeah,
Because it's like, sure, I'm paying 1 more to get this guy, or I'm paying 2 more. If I'm ahead, I don't feel too bad. And typically in those decks, you're ahead in both resources and on board. Like if you have Lotagon out, at that point you are ahead.
More of a revival effect.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think with a couple of like splashes of support, Apple becomes a very disruptive card. With Lotagon, that card is nuts. That card is terrifying. If I see a Lotagon come down, I know I'm gonna have a bad time because they're gonna play Ambrosia and then they're gonna apple me. So like it's just a bad time.
No, even better. Just Apple discard Jataya, Rise from, or whatever resurrection card we get in the future. Bring back Jataya, Ambrosia.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. And you're refreshing your hand anyway.
Yeah,
refresh your
a
hand.
lot of times what I've done with my Fruit deck playing it is I play Jataya turn 1, it gets destroyed, or even if it sticks in play, and then you just rise from Jataya, ascend into Lotagon, or if it sticks in play, you ascend into Lotagon and then rise from your Jataya and have both out, and then you try to chain your Ambrosias and stuff together. So the more Underworld support and Underworld Matter cards we get that you want to pitch stuff into the Underworld for, it does get better and better. Right now it's like cheese strat reanimation stuff.
Yeah.
And Fruit is its only 2 homes. Maybe it sees more play if there's more discard relevant stuff. If there's effects that trigger when it's discarded from hand, it'll get good. If there's cards that find Apple Ambrosia, it'll become even stronger in Fruit.
Like, yeah, if something searches the Fruit, that'd be great.
It makes Fruit really consistent and strong, but right now it's definitely
Here's the real question, right? What's the next Fruit card we're gonna get?
Rotten Fruit. This card counts as Ambrosia when you play it. It does nothing.
Yeah.
It's gonna match the new monkey card that they're making. The new Japanese monkey card that they're making.
KG spearheaded that one.
Yeah, the KG
banana. I like a golden banana.
It would be interesting. Would be interesting what the 3-drop in the Fruit deck would look like, and what fruit they add to the 3-drop to make it insane. But
let's get a 3-drop for the Jataya Lotagon stuff.
That'd be fun.
Back all fruit from your Underworld.
Yeah.
That would be like every time you.
If
you play Ambrosia or Apple, you return all Ambrosias and Apples in your Underworld.
From your Underworld to your hand.
Yeah.
It'd be broken.
We get a subclass for Fruit.
But that's its only effect. Its only effect is bring all Ambrosias back to your hand. Yeah. That's its only effect. That's a 3-drop.
But no, that's why I put it in there, because I think like in the future with the right amount of support, that card's gonna be it's gonna be fun. It's gonna allow for some fun stuff, I think.
All right, so let's move on to our 4th place now, which I don't think is surprising.
Do I get to talk about EQ since I was the one who put it?
You want to talk about Earthquake? Yeah, we can talk about Earthquake first.
Yeah. Since I was the only one who put it there, I think this one's just going to see a lot of meta play. It's just such an easy out to stuff.
Yeah.
It might be a bit expensive, but the tempo you gain from it. So that's literally the only reason I put it there. And I also think it's I think non-Earth decks might even just splash in 2 Earth and some Earthquakes if they need to get over some stuff really easily.
Yeah.
Because it's just with especially with Florals now being just a catch-up card, not being able to use if your opponent only has one Elastral out. Earthquakes, I just think is better for the more proactive meta we're in. And I also think it's very interesting when compared to Thunderstorm, because earlier I was saying how I think I kind of like Equal Link's a bit better than Kinleo because runes are very threatening to it. I think the exact opposite is true for the runes. You want to deal with the Elestrals because they're the more threatening thing overall. And now you don't care if your opponent uses a rune because you've already dealt with their threat anyway. I think that's what edges it out. Because I think right now runes are just Thunderstorm. Only reason why I don't like it as much, I didn't put it on my list, is because I think it's just better to force your opponent to use the spirits on the rune.
Nice when you want to make the push. Like I've done double T-Storm one turn and just feels so good. Just remove half their back row.
Yeah.
In general.
Double Thunderstorm does feel nice.
Double Thunderstorm feels good, but it also feels bad
It's
because
expensive.
it's like it's so expensive. Yeah.
Okay, so
You'd
like
rather force your opponent to use spirits.
in Yu-Gi-Oh, you always had the blind MST, and that always feels bad because you hit or miss. Thunderstorm kind of feels the same way. It's kind of like a blind T-Storm. But that's why kind of like you dwindle down the resources and you activate it. Like if you want to get rid of, it's good when you want to get rid of the Staff of Demeter, or you want to get rid of Field Spell.
I just play P-Gust. Like.
But then you take up your normal enchant.
Yeah, it depends on
cat.
I think it depends on your deck.
Yeah, it depends on the deck.
If you
I
need
think
the
it's more the
initiative, you play
decks you're playing
Thunderstorm.
Yeah, I think I think what would make Thunderstorm on the same level as EQ would be is if it costed 1.
Yes.
But then it would be really, really strong.
I think it would be
that-
like, well, no, that's not necessarily true.
I think it would
Because
be
like, I think if it costed 1, destroy target rune, it'd be fine.
I feel like that'd be a little too good.
I think going forward it could be problematic if we get some more powerful divine runes and like
Yeah,
artifacts.
that's fair.
That's a good
The
spirit
more-
exchange.
That's what
stays down,
P-Gust
though.
does, and it's searchable.
Yeah. So, but like
You use the normal
the
enchantment.
thing with Thunderstorm
I
is
guess, yeah.
if you need to stay on a proactive, if you need to play a card, if you need to keep going with some kind of strategy, like if you're trying to get into your Griff Fuse or something faster,
Yeah.
having Thunderstorm to protect your first card that you play or whatnot, like if they play one face down and you rip out that PTA so you can play a card for turn, you keep that momentum, and that's what makes Thunderstorm good, which is why I'm afraid if it was 1 cost, it'd be too strong.
Like
That's
in
fair.
my decks, I run triple T-Storm, triple P-Gust. I was like, you got to make sure that back row. It works. I've had
You
great
suck.
success.
Like,
Like you are getting any back rows off my Vol Tempest hits. It's I'm setting up the board. You're not going to be able to do anything.
I think that's more indicative of the decks you're playing. I definitely think Thunderstorm is only better for sure, but outside of like just meta, since I think one spirits are probably going to be the best kind of strategy, I just think it's more advantageous to force your opponent to use the rune than use the 2 spirits to destroy it.
or if we could activate Invoke Runes in response.
Yes.
I think that
Yeah,
Thunderstorm
like a-
would be a really good card.
Yes.
Yeah, so like if
and
for
negate it.
example, like you activated Tsunami, right? In response I play Thunderstorm. And then it would destroy Tsunami, right? Like
no, it would not.
well I'm just saying like if
It
that's
needs
how
to
it
negate it as well.
Yeah.
But if it,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
negated it.
Yeah, like it would change the effect, negate target rune. Negate or destroy target rune. Something like that. Like in that sense.
But that'd be a
I think
hand
that-
trap, and no one likes hand traps.
I like hand trap.
But we're getting a little off topic. Earthquake.
Anyway, that was my
Solid.
speech about Earthquake. We can go on to 4.
My quick comment on Earthquake is I think what's nice about Earthquake is protection from targeted runes is the hardest to get out except for Bag of Winds, whereas protection from celestial effects is fairly simple with either a Majesty or a Hammer, which Hammer is pretty easy to get out. And protection from counter runes is pretty easy to get with like Sonic Core or like Trident Poseidon. So I think a rune that destroys something is probably the most consistent way to remove something, and that makes Earthquake solid. But let's move on to everyone's favorite card to basically clickbait,
Dog.
which is
Dog.
Nectar of the Gods.
Is this really a discussion though? Like it
It's-
draws 2 cards. That's why the card is good. Like,
Yeah, it's like that's the thing about all these invoke runes. Like they're just simple, but they're useful, good, simple. So drops and Nog, in their 4th place behind basically all the other good rooms.
I mean, we can Words. We can talk about why we didn't add it to our top 5
I think it's more.
Oh, that is
interesting
interesting.
compared to Eagle and Moxie, who added it to their top 5.
Yeah. So why is it not in your top 5?
I think it's a good card. It definitely makes top 6 or 7. But sometimes it's like I've seen Drop just be a lot better than Nog currently, and I just don't. I just think every other card is better. It's like, it's an expensive draw card. It's like sometimes you don't want to play it, and it just feels bad. But it does give you hand advantage. I understand that, but
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, time out. Think of it like this. I'm spending 1 to draw 1. Right? You're spending
Yeah.
2 to draw 2. And you're only using 1 card. So like if you think of it, right, you're plussing both. So you only have to play 3 of them and you're drawing 6. Or if it was a card that was like pay 1 to draw 1, that would feel bad. That would feel really bad. Pay 2 to draw 2, now that's a little better.
But it kind of the same thing as what Eagle was saying earlier with Afros. If you're just drawing to draw, what are you drawing into?
But
It's like,
Nog-
I mean,
like,
You're
Nog
not
isn't
gonna
like
get your normal enchant. That's the big thing.
Yeah, you're not taking
well, I
up
mean,
the
yeah,
enchant.
not even the normal enchant. Yeah, that's definitely the thing. But I just thought like everything.
And it's
not
colorless. It
I
can go
run,
into
like,
anything.
But we'll get into it later. That's why Drop is so high for me. But Drop, I still run it. I still run the Nog, but currently I don't think is as strong as people think it is. Like I don't run like if you have enough searches in your deck,
Yeah.
you do not need a Nog.
You know.
There's a lot of search right now.
That's the thing. If you have this, there is such a thing as too much draw. There's like
Yes, there is. I think
Take that
that's
back.
saying.
there is.
You heretic.
If you're
Never is.
Like it comes down to what your deck wants to do. But if you're able to search for the cards you want, you don't need to draw.
If I can die with 30 cards in my hand, I would.
Okay. So
Can I go real quick words?
the reason I don't have this on my list is because late game it feels really bad.
Yeah.
It feels
That is
so
true.
bad late
It's
game where I feel like all the other powerful runes, like this would be my number 6. But there's 5 really good runes that feel pretty solid at any stage in the game, where this is like, if it's turn 5 and I have 6 spirits left, I play Nectar Gods because I need to find an answer. I'm already behind and I'm spending spirits to find an answer I might not find when I'm looking at effectively 1 more card in my deck I would not normally see. And that's why it's just barely not there. Like it's a great card early game, like turn 1, turn 2, just play it. Turn 5, 6 and you're low, it just hurts so much.
What I wish is we had a card in Force of Will that did this, where you look at the top 2 cards of your deck and you can choose to either draw them or put them on the bottom of your deck and draw the next 2 cards. Because you don't get to see the next 2 cards that you draw, right?
MTG Scry.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. But you look at the top 2, right? And then you weigh the options of, okay, do I want these or do I not? Because you're gambling on the next 2 cards because you don't get to see them. I wish Nog did.
Okay, I know. Now, like I've played games with something with a similar effect. Yeah.
I wish Nog did that. Instead, I think that if Nog did that, it would probably be my number 1 rune.
It would be busted.
I think that'd be really hard.
I don't think it would be busted though.
It would be so
I think it would
strong.
be good.
Going to the top 4, if you're like looking at the top 2 and you immediately know these are bad cards, you're like instant bottom. Let me draw
If
the
it
other
was
2.
like-
No. Right. So my thought process for my thought process for that, right, is with Drop, the reason we all think it's so good is because you recycle, right?
Yeah, you get rid of what you don't need. Or
Yeah,
don't
you
want.
get rid of what you don't need. With
sculpting.
that, you're hand sculpting. With that, you're looking at the top. You're looking at the top 2. If you're like, oh, I don't need these right now, you get the next 2. There is the possibility that they're just as useless. And then late game, it still feels bad. Like playing that late game still feels bad because you look at the top 2, you're like, oh, I don't need these right now. And if you don't get anything you need again, you're like, oh, I just lose the game. Got it. If
Yeah.
you get something, it keeps you in the game for a turn, maybe, but it still doesn't. It's not like, oh, I'm taking back this game. Like we don't really have a lot of that.
No, like I'll go off of that. Like I had a really interesting game. If you guys haven't seen the Summer Winds versus my Volta Guild game,
Yeah.
it was hysterical. The last game dropped. At the moment, I didn't need Ryceros. I didn't need Zeus. Put them back. Shuffled the deck. Drew Ryceros and Zeus again. It's like it just feels really bad drawing the same cards you put back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I feel like, yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think drop would be. I like drop, and the reason I like drop is because it's just draw 2 cards. It's very simple, right? There's not a lot.
We can talk about drop when we get to drop.
Yeah, not drop. Not drop. Nog.
Okay.
I knew what I meant. Not what I said.
All right.
Nog. The reason I like Nog is because it's very simple. You draw 2 cards, right? You are netting a positive. I'm paying 2 to draw 2, right?
You're paying 2 to see one more card than what it could have normally been if
So
you
you're
didn't run it.
cycling one, drawing one.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Because like on my draw, I draw and then I play Nog. I got 3 cards that turn.
Yeah,
Right.
no, you do.
What
get
would you?
three
What
cards.
would you? I guess. What if Nog had a graceful charity type effect?
Gosh.
I mean, now we're getting to like what ifs. We're talking
That-
about what
that
the
is
card
definitely a
is.
different card.
So, Jacob, what are your thoughts on Dog? You haven't really spoken too much.
So I put it in 4th because it is a good card. I think drops is a bit. Even though I put drops lower on the list, I do think it is a bit better with a lot of the decks. Just being able to have a better mulligan is really nice. But I shouldn't say it's strictly better. But I think a lot of decks might just like to see the extra +1 to hand and whenever they play Nog. And the big thing is, I just don't see how Nog is ever going to be bad until we just get a strictly better card. Because the decks that don't have good engines or advantage engines just run Nog.
Yep.
It's going to see a ton of play. And that with the runes as opposed to the elestrals, I think it was a lot easier to find cards. The reason to put them there is just because it's going to see play in a ton of decks because it's generic. And I just think Nog is just the epitome of that card. It doesn't need to be insane. It just needs to be good, and it does exactly what it needs to.
Yep.
There's only a 4th because it's not. I don't think
Now,
it's
we
insane.
were kind of getting into the drops tangent. Drops is the next card on the list, so we could jump right into drops from here.
Let's go for it.
So,
Yeah, talk
Drops,
about how all
I
of you
bel-
guys are crazy.
drops is on everybody's list. It's Jacob's 5th, it's Moxie's 2nd, it's Baron's 3rd, and it's my 2nd. So as Jacob touched on, it's a better, like if it's in your opening hand, why mulligan? So it's a better mulligan. It's in a mid-game situation. It's
Now
Not
it's the
anymore.
same
It's not. Not anymore. It's not. Keep
no,
going
it's
the
still
next
a better
guys.
mulligan.
It costs 2.
Yeah,
Still a
but
better
you
mulligan.
ship the cards
But
you
you get
don't
to choose.
need. So if you have 2 cards in your
well,
hand and 2 cards you don't need,
Hmm.
and and drops, you just go, all right, I'll keep this hand, keep the 2 cards I need, ship the rest back, and it's more consistent than a mulligan.
It's a gentleman's mulligan.
It's a better mulligan.
Yeah.
And mid game, you need to find an answer. You can ship your whole hand to find more answers. You could draw potentially 3-4 cards. You might draw the same cards, but you do get potential to draw a lot of cards. If we ever get like draw engine shenanigans where it's like we get effects when we draw stuff, it'll help there. But
Jacob.
it's just a strong consistency tool, and it's insanely strong early game at doing what it wants to do. So I have
Why-
it pretty high up.
Here's my question, Jacob. Why is it your 5th?
Partially because I think over the long run we'll see certain decks run it. I think drops just feels really good right now because there's not a lot of consistency, and it's the best way to get consistency. And it's a better mulligan, but I think for longevity, Nog is a bit better overall. I think drops will fall into one of those cards that you want to run when you have some more inconsistent piece, like 2 or 3 drops to shuffle back in. I not fully explain why, but I just have this feeling that as we see this meta develop, drops might drop off a little bit.
Yeah, now that it costs 2.
I
So
I think I see drops
guys
getting
complain.
less seen ubiquitously, but I think if we get combo decks that require certain
That's gonna
pieces,
live in
it's going to
gonna live
see a ton of play in those over Nectar. So I still think drops is going to consistently see really powerful play. for a while, and it will. I don't think it'll ever feel bad to run at least one of in your deck.
That's kind of
No,
why I said
yeah.
like drops. I think right now feels a bit more powerful than Nog, but I think Nog just has the general longevity better than drops. I think drops.
Yeah. You just have to remember that fundamentally both those cards do something different.
Yes.
One extends your hand size while the other one hand sculpts, which
It's different. Yeah.
Pick your
it's
poison.
different. They both are different. They're both draws, but they're both different.
So
So, I'm really curious since you have it at your second place, but it sounds like you've been down talking because it's now cost.
So drop is my second because yes, it's a very good card. It's really good. It would be my number one if
Still causes
everyone
one.
didn't unanimously was like nerf the card.
It was too good at one.
It was not too good. It was
yes,
good now.
it
It
was
was good now.
I-
Going
it
into
was-
later sets,
it
that
was
card is not going to be
great
played
at
as much as
one
it is
cost.
now.
I disagree.
If
I
it
think
stayed
it
at
was never
one,
played.
If it stayed at one, it would
already
never
been
not see
called
play.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree with Lawrence.
Here is what I'm going to say on this card. This card is good. This card is really good. Late game, this card is useless.
No, it's a 1-for-1.
Yeah,
It's always
it's-
good for a 1-for-1.
No, late game. Okay, because look at most of the decks we play now, right? There are very few decks that play one-ofs, and those that do have ways to search those one-ofs when they need those one-ofs, right? So to hand sculpt for hand sculpting, typically that's used in decks that need specific pieces. That's why in combo decks it's really good. That's why I think in like Humbust it was a little nuts because you could drop into a drop into a drop, right? In decks like that, that's a problem. But that is not a problem with drop. That's a problem with the effect of Humbust. So I think that the card itself is a good card, but it is not as nutty as people are thinking. It's nutty right now because we have two colorless efficient cards, Nog and Drop, and Drop just happens to be cheaper, and because it's cheaper, it's better than Nog. With it now being at 2, it's just, I mean, it's
No,
late game. I'm like,
at 1, it's almost always a better knock though.
no, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Because
But,
okay, you're
like-
not going
like-
+1, but drawing 3 when you ship off the 3 cards you're not going to need
But-
now.
But, right, here's what I'm saying. The card didn't need to get put to 2. All it needed to say is you don't draw the extra, you don't get the +1.
Well, now the whole debate, like whether the draw extra or the 1, it was like it was
It's
a really
Yeah.
The draw extra is what makes that card better, in my
I agree
opinion.
with that. It needs to be either or. I don't think it
Yeah.
could exist at one as is.
I think at 1, it's fine as long as it doesn't get the plus.
I would agree
and
with that
literally
Yeah.
to a magical balance. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
you go.
because you're going -1 to try to improve your
Yeah.
hand.
And
So I agree with that.
that is why everyone was freaking out about that card. It wasn't because you hand sculpted. It wasn't because you got to pitch and it was a better model. It was because it netted a positive
Well, even.
plus the hand sculpt.
Yeah.
It-
Okay,
it
so
was
say
an
plus
even-
that. Yes.
But yeah, I think one thing we can touch on here though is the difference between something costing 1 and something costing 2 is huge.
It's massive. It's
And
massive
you don't
in this
really
game.
I didn't really realize that for like the neutral stuff until I started playing with drops at 2. I'm like, oh man, this hurts so
Yeah.
much. When something costs 1, it's like, oh, this is so free. At 2, it's like, this
It's
is
not
kind of
even-
not free anymore.
I know.
It's
That's why
10%.
like I was saying in my video, like going over the buffs and nerfs, like putting it to 2 destroyed its place in the meta.
Didn't destroy it, but it definitely hampered it a lot.
Going
Yeah.
into set 2, I guarantee you we see drops going from 3 to 1 and then something in the side.
I've only
Or
been
2
playing
and
2
1 in the
drops.
sideboard.
I've been running
I
2
wouldn't even
dog,
put it
2
in side
drops.
booster. I don't see any reason to put a draw
The
card in
only
the side.
if you're playing a combo deck, I see a
Yeah.
reason to.
I,
Yeah.
I
And if
think
you're
it falls-
playing, yeah.
Combo meta, yeah.
I think it falls
but-
more to a niche than generic.
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
like that, yeah. It went from like this card can go in any deck and it works fine to now I'm playing this and it doesn't feel like yes anymore unless I'm ahead. If I'm behind, that card, that's a risk. It's still a risk.
You're
Yeah,
you're
you're
dying
just
to-
digging.
But
And if you don't find it, that card felt
to
bad.
compare this though, like late game to a nectar, if this was 1 cost late game comparing to a nectar, right? If I have 1
Yes.
card in hand, I top deck a drops, I see 3 cards return for 1.
Yes.
If I'm at 1 card in hand, and I draw a Nectar, I see 3 cards for the turn. But also, when I see 3 cards with the drops, I get rid of that 1 card that's been stuck in my hand for 3 turns
So
because
you
it's
didn't need,
useless.
yeah.
And
But
then
that's
if you have an empty hand, you top deck drops, it's a 1 cost draw 1. Whereas if you're empty handed, you draw Nectar, it's a 2 cost draw 2. You could, in theory, expend 1 to draw from an empty hand with the drops in hand from the top deck and still see 2 cards, thus allowing you to see 3 cards from an empty hand.
yeah.
Which I
So
think makes drops, and like part of the reason I didn't like how drops was 1 cost is just because with its current effect at 1 cost, late game, it's still insanely impactful, whereas Neck to the Gods late game is very dangerous.
And that's what I'm saying. That just kind of like proves my point there. The reason that effect was so good is because you got the +1.
Well, you wouldn't even, but yeah.
Like if it just said replace your hand, I guarantee you people will be like, oh, it's a good card.
It just costs a spirit, didn't cost any card advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just I get a spirit to redo my hand.
Yep.
And I get to keep the good stuff. Great.
It really sounds like, Moxie, you just want, like, we're talking about 2 different cards here. You just want a generically good card to hand correct.
I just
Whoa.
when drop was nerfed, because like I saw drop as a good like combo piece card, and now in combo decks, because with combo decks, and the reason why I'm such an advocate for combo decks, guys, is because they allow for a lot more mechanisms of the game to kind of show. That's why I really don't play beater decks, because it's like I can play elestrals. Everyone can play elestrals. Not everyone can play puzzle pieces. And so I think with drop being nerfed to 2 in combo decks, you don't want to like the goal is to spend a little amount of resources as possible because you're spending so many. Like you're already
back as well. Like you need to like realize like, oh, do I need this? Actually need this card? Do I not need this card?
exactly.
You need to know what your hand has, what its potential is, and what you're looking for.
Yes. And so in decks like that, like decks that require like I don't mean to be an ass when I say this, excuse my French, but a higher level of thinking, drop isn't as broken as everyone thought, because you were like, okay, I need to keep 2 cards because of this. I can get this, draw 3 off this. And then you're like, you're doing all the math in your head. And then when it gets put to 2, you're like, I'm taking an extra damage because our spirits are attached to our life. I'm taking an extra damage this turn. I'm already going to be playing 4 cards because of this combo that I need to pull off so that I can have this longevity. And it's like, there's so much more math that goes into it. I think if the nerf would have just been remove the +1, the card would have been fine.
Counterpoint,
it's just like
the high level thinking play though. In high level competition where everyone theoretically has the high level of thinking for their combo decks or whatnot, that's still a problem, because if I had a high level of competition, the card's broken because they're all high level players. Then you have a competitive issue with the card.
So I think at that level, right, most of the decks that were doing that, you weren't gaining anything specific beyond just getting an out, right? Like you weren't going, I'm drawing into Exodia. Like when you play drop, you were just getting rid of what was garbage to get something good, and then you netted one.
So,
what were you saying, Jacob?
You know what? So I'm hearing is you were wanting a way to allow drops to not be nerfed in combo decks, but not be a good card for people who just wanted another consistency tool just to be able to get out of bad hands. Because that's kind of what it sounds like. That you.
What I wanted drop, like Baron was saying, I wish drop would have just been Magical Mallet, where it was just I pay 1 to restructure my hand.
Well, the reason I say that is because in the more aggressive decks, that more beater style decks that were just using it as like a way to get rid of their trash cards, just draw new ones. It didn't really matter what it was as long as it was better. Do they really want to run it? Do they really want to lose a card for that to potentially get some better
That's
stuff?
the thing though. The reason they run it in their decks though is because they netted 1.
So Moxie, you're trashing on this card. Can I just say, as much as you're trashing on this card, you still put it at number 2.
Yeah. And so the reason I put it at number 2, is because all of the like, I would say colorless is what I've been calling them, runes. There's not many staples right now. Like we have Nog, we have Shield, we have PTA, and we have Drop. I haven't seen a lot of Chariots. I haven't seen a lot of Star. I've never seen Necklace. Like
I've seen some
most
necklace. I've gotten blown out by
Seen a few
necklace so
necklaces.
many times, dude.
that.
The
That's what I'm
one-up
saying.
necklace has destroyed my deck.
I've never seen it,
sometimes.
and that's why I'm
It's
like,
so.
I
it's
think
frustrating.
in especially going forward with how we've seen, because keep in mind, guys, going forward, we're not gonna have this chance to like nerf cards and stuff like that because they're gonna be printed and then sent out unless Dan does like a week to 2 weeks in between each print run to give us access to all the cards online, test them, and then decide to nerf stuff. Like it's just gonna be a release. So
That's why he has like the round table stuff that he's mentioned. Like that's why there's people
Yeah,
playtesting
yeah.
the cards. We know that, like Disencoder like is in the
Yeah,
ear
yeah, yeah.
and all that jazz. So there's
But-
people to say like, hold up, Dan, card
Yeah, hold
destruction on one is a little strong.
but no, that's what I'm saying is like even going forward, I think like even though I'm trashing on drop because I don't like its nerf, I think it's gonna be because it's colorless and because it's like it's an effect that retroactively helps any deck. It's a good
It
card.
will never be
I-
a bad effect.
No,
It comes down to how many do you run in your
Yes.
deck.
That is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a bad effect. Let me make that clear. It's not a bad effect.
I definitely don't think they're running 3 anymore. That's
yes.
I
you
think
run 2.
Yeah.
2's your max. If you run 3, it's just like, oh well.
You run 3 if you have a really specific combo in mind.
If you're looking for
Really,
one card in your
really specific.
Yeah,
Like your deck
yeah,
only
yeah.
wins with that combo. You run 3. But we spent a lot of time on this. We have another third place card, and I don't think we're gonna have too many complaints about this card. But it's Ambrosia. Like, so
Interesting
Ambrosia
though.
is first place for Jacob, first place for Moxie, 5th place for Baron and I. It's just a card where when I was putting it in my list, I was like, I need to put this in the top 5 because it's there. I just don't know where to slot it. Okay, safe spot, put it in 5 for now, and I never moved it.
I would love to explain my reason for this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Ambrosia, the reason I put it at number 1 is because I think it's going to be a good card for a while, but I think specifically in this meta, it is going to be the difference between winning and losing sometimes, depending on how many Ambrosias you see. The pace of the game is just like perfectly fine-tuned, where just getting that net 2 back to Spirit deck matters so much. And if your opponent can't get it and you can get it, it's going to be the difference between games. That being said, though, I do think as the game gets faster or slower, Ambrosia will matter less, but it's still going to be a great option to have.
I think the best part of Ambrosia's not that it nets you 2 spirits back, it fixes the spirits in your spirit deck, making if
It's
you're running
flexible as well.
2 or 3 spirits in your deck, it lets you get what you need back. If you expended, let's say, wrong, or maybe you drew way more, earth cards than you normally do in a game, and you expended some Teratlus, or you don't have enough Teratlus anymore, it fixes your element. Like it's a color fixer in a sense, and it's a life gain, and it's a rune for like either fruit to work with or maybe Humbus to work with in the future. Like,
And it works in any deck.
I
combined
think
with Nog, it's basically a free draw 2.
Yeah.
Like it does a lot.
I think you explained well why Ambrosia has a long longevity. I didn't mention the color correction, but I think right now it's just probably the most insane room. And not the color correction and just how it matters with that life total because of the pace of the game. I think that combination makes it insane.
Ambrosia is the reason like we don't see a lot of Sluggles and Quackles.
Yeah, because what's the point of running them when you can play
Yeah.
a better room?
Yeah.
Sluggle has a
Well,
purpose, but not
yeah.
Crackle in my opinion.
But
I can see Ambrosia's good right now for the meta. We're very slow. Ambrosia's a slow card. It's like the one thing, it doesn't really set tempo. Sure, it's like if you're behind and you're like Ambrosiaing, you're gaining 2 spirits, but your opponent just hits you back for like 3 damage or 4 damage. It's like, I guess it kind of helps for a little bit. But it's like once the meta starts picking up, I see Ambrosia just falling off. There's no reason to run Ambrosia when you're aggro, or you're more consistently drawing the pieces you need, getting there a lot faster. Ambrosia will not be seen at all in any decks.
I think it might see a little bit of sideboard play against potential aggro stuff.
Maybe sideboard.
Yeah.
If that matchup is particularly slow and matters for it.
Yeah. I see it seeing side, but I'll agree with that, Baron. Like once we start picking up in the pace of the game, Ambrosia's gonna fall off.
Yeah.
But I do think it'll see sideboard play.
But right
it's
now,
really good.
I can see the sideboard, definitely.
Right now, I
think
think
it-
it's the one card that is probably in every single deck at least as a one of, and you can't say that about basically any other card except maybe Nog. Like Nog is close to being in every deck, but there are a lot of decks that I've seen that don't run Nog. So, but I always
think
see
a
at
lot of
least
decks
one
might also
Ambrosia.
shoot.
Like when you get
Yeah, every deck, like, I think at least 2 Ambrosias. I don't see a reason to run 1 Ambrosia. I was like, I think you either run.
I've seen a couple
3.
decks that have one just
Yeah,
because it's like, oh, I have
forget the
39
deck.
cards. What do I do with my one extra slot that's not a 3
I'll just
of?
run Ambrosia.
Ambrosia. So
It's an Ambrosia.
it's ubiquitous. It's good. It does a lot of stuff right now that's really helpful and
Doing winner or
synergistic.
losing.
And then you just play Jataya, Ambrosia, and win a tournament.
Yeah, Jacob.
It helps you against those pesky burn decks. So if
Yeah.
if you're playing a burn deck and you're like, I want to keep trying to burn you, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get all that life back, and then all your combo's just useless.
You played
You're-
Eruption?
you-
I played Ambrosia.
you the stinky.
I mean, that's pretty much the explanation of my tournament match. Burn. I'm like, okay, cool. Ambrosia,
Heal.
Ambrosia.
Heal.
Yeah, I was
Heal.
like, if Ambrosia not burn decks, I was like,
It's so
Yeah.
good.
I
All
think
right.
we can all agree Ambrosia for this meta is just insane, and it definitely still has a lot of viability.
It's got a lot
moving
of
forward.
staying power, I think, just for how
Yep.
much it can do for you. All right, so let's
I
move
think-
on to, I think, number 2 at this point.
Can I say something real quick just in
Yeah,
terms of
while I'm
this list?
pulling it up.
I think for all cards just in this list in general, I think a lot right now, because it's such a limited card pool, a lot of these see a lot of generic play because it's just whatever's the best. I think a lot of these cards will see a lot of shifting into specific niches
Mhm.
or certain ones. But Ambrosia's is just one of those that I just don't think will as much as others.
and
Which is
just
notable.
because we don't have a card in the top 5 doesn't mean it's not good. Like Tsunami doesn't make our top 5, but it's runnable in
A lot of times-
majority.
A
It's
lot of
just
times
like-
fall into specific niches, and that's why it's
Yes.
up here.
All right, so we're going to jump into the top 2 runes, which is, to no one's surprise, the top 2 are Poison Tip and Shield. Poison Tip barely got
But-
edged out by Shield.
I think we might as well talk about both at the same time because they
They're
practically
the,
do
yeah,
the
they're the
same.
same
That's why I
card.
listed
Wait,
them both as seconds.
Well-
different.
They're
I mean,
different
I think
cards,
I'm
but
the
think they-
only person that put Poison Tip above Shield. So I think that's relevant to talk about.
No, Baron did. Oh, no, Baron didn't. I was
No,
I
No, I
mean-
put
yeah.
PTA.
I think, yeah,
Moxie didn't even put PTA.
No, I didn't.
yeah. So
The reason why is because Shield and PTA in my mind are the same. They're the
Okay.
same.
Clearly list
they're-
them as the same.
they're-
So.
okay,
Cheated.
so
Cheating.
there's the reason that I put PTA above Shield, and that's because I find that PTA, because it destroys an Elestral, will get rid of it when you bounce. Like, so because the meta is so 1-drop dependent right now, when you bounce a 1-drop, it doesn't do a ton, because theoretically, if that's a problem 1-drop for you, they're going to replay that 1-drop, and it's still a problem you got to deal with another card. You get the tempo out of it, but you get the same tempo with Poison Tip, and you get rid of it for the same cost. And I think that's incredibly relevant right now for how like heavy 1-drops are played. I think getting rid of a 1-drop is better than putting it back in your hand in most cases.
Yeah, and like PTA, sure, you might take a spirit damage or lose an Elestral, but like you still get the initiative on tempo regardless.
Yeah, so that's why I put PTA above Shield, because I think even like against bigger things, if someone's playing Centarbor or Voltempest, like, cool, Voltempest doesn't need to attack you to do damage, and Centarbor can just pop Centarbor can just pop your counter rune. Like if it's a shield,
Like a
Centarbor
front
goes
pop.
goodbye, and Voltempest just goes throw stuff over the wall. Like,
Yeah.
so Poison Arrow deals with your 3-drops. Shield doesn't always deal with the 3-drops, except for maybe Pantera and Majesty. But at least Majesty is doing something, not attacking, it's protecting the board. Pantera literally does nothing unless it can attack. So that's
Yeah.
my thoughts on it.
Disagree on that. Like I feel like Shield is just the fact that Shield doesn't target just makes it
I don't think
generally
it's relevant
better.
right now. I don't think it's relevant.
Huh?
Yeah, not targeting isn't as
You think it's
relevant
relevant?
anymore.
So
Yeah.
Anymore.
With the buff
Even with
to
I mean, it,
with the
like,
buff
it gives
to
you-
Trident, it's not as
Yeah.
relevant that it doesn't target anymore.
Because
I
all
mean,
of
but
the
you're-
decks,
not every deck is like putting in Trident to like
No,
get over
but-
Volt.
No.
What I would say though is all the decks that run target protection they're like Volt Tempest and Water, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, realistically, I think going forward maybe that'll be a bigger thing. But like,
I think in the future, Shield will be better than PTA mainly because we'll have on destruction effects. So if you have cards where like, oh, if this card is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, something happens.
I
Then
disagree.
PTA will, I think, would be a lot worse than Shield.
I the reason I disagree is the same reason I put it at 5th on my list is because of its nerf. You have to pay for
Well, they
what
both
you're
have the same
destroying.
nerf.
No, yeah,
They both-
but Arrow does that -2 attack, and that is the difference sometimes between attack and elestrals is whether or not I'm going to kill it. And so I think with, and I talked a little bit about this. I think again with the nerf, like I love that shield cost 1. I love that. It doesn't feel as bad. But if I am shielding a 3-cost celestial, I'm taking 4 damage.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, and but like that could be the difference, right? Like with a lot of the Elestrals company like pushing the use of its 3-cost Elestrals, trying to get them out more. With every 2 costs now special enchanting their 3, with Pentor being easily able to get sent.
I have a counterpoint to that, but at the same time, using PTA against a 3 cost is worse than Shield because you're expending 5.
No, yeah.
You're expending 3.
No,
You're
spending
Unless they attack into, yeah, they can attack.
3.
They
unless they're
attack. Yeah.
attacking. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So I mean, yeah, but like I think like the difference there is like I'm killing
Actually, no, that is 4. It's 4. Yes.
Yeah. It's the
Killing it
same,
is
but
very
I'm
relevant.
killing it. It's not going back to my opponent's hand. I don't have to deal with it. In 2
Poison
turns.
Tip is
Yeah, but
definitely
you
worse.
don't really have to deal with a 3 cost in an opponent's hand. It's like this becomes a dead card.
Poison Tip is
sometimes.
worse against a 3-drop, but because there's not a ton of 3-drops that are relevant right now,
Yeah.
Shield isn't as good because Poison Tipped Arrow is definitely better against smaller things where you're not taking a ton of damage and you're getting rid of it for good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And Shield, if you're going against a lot of 3-drops, Shield is better. But because there's not a ton of relevant 3-drops right now that even care about Shield,
Yeah.
Shield is worse because again, your Centaur, your Volt Tempest, they don't need to attack to do work. Pantera can wait a second, and you can't get through the Pantera to really hit somebody. Like a lot of 3-drops, if you just slam a 3-drop and wait, if you slam a 3-drop and wait, like the 3-drops doesn't need to attack, and then yeah, but Poison Tipped Arrow feels really strong against 1s and 2s because it gets rid of.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Poison Tipped Arrow's triggers on a game action that your opponent will take. Shield is on a game action that your opponent won't necessarily take.
Yeah, it's so easy to just go, oh, big threat, pass. You have to now try and deal with it.
If the threat's already on the field and you draw PTA, it just feels sad.
That is
Like,
true.
it's-
Same
You're
thing with
it's not
Shield, though. Like
So-
if you draw Shield a turn late, it feels bad. But yeah, Jacob, go ahead.
Well, I mean, if you draw into Shield, you could at least activate it during the next attack. You can't activate it if they're okay. Like you said, we're wide meta more than a tall.
Yeah.
But if we go to a tall meta and they have it out, your PTA is useless. It's not going to do anything because he's already out.
What I'm getting from all this conversation, this is exactly why I list them together, is we can go round and round and round about Shield versus Poison Tip Arrow. And I think the fact they just exist together so nicely because
they're
they check
synonymous.
different things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sure, I
fair.
think Shield's going to be better in the long run because of the untargeted removal gives it potential for the future that isn't, I don't think, really being actualized right now. But like right now, we could keep going around in circles about which one's better. I think it's a moot point. It just depends on what situation, and you're just going to run both anyway.
Yeah,
So-
you're gonna run at least 2
Here's-
of each.
I guess a good so like Baron was saying with all of these, like these may be like our top 5 list, right? But most of these are played in a lot of the meta decks. Like you see a drop, you see a shield, you see a nog, you see something.
Yeah.
Right? And my question is going into set 2, like seeing, I think Bob is a good precursor for what Frost is going to do. And that is stall.
Thunderfrost stall, let's go.
Yeah.
I-
Like that.
Rune does something like disenchant, freeze a back row.
Yeah, like that's what
Sure,
I'm
that's-
saying. I think Frost is going to be stall. My question is, where the hell do these fit into stall? I get drop and nog, that's fine. But like with a meta because right now our meta is go wide because we're playing 1-drops, and that's what feels good. But
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, if once the meta, because the meta shifts in every card game, if it shifts to I have 2 elestrals and they may attack, you don't know. I'm more worried about what's on your back row, and like I think that like both Shield and PTA kind of just go like, we're here, like we're vibing.
We're just gonna try to run, Krakatoa and Volt Tempest in the same deck. That's all.
God.
Just throw 6 damage every turn.
Colored. Oh god, 4 element deck.
Yeah, I do agree with that. That Shield and PTA could kind of come in and out, but I think it will always be something that people consider.
Yeah,
which is
no, definitely.
another name's a good sign. That's a good card.
Yeah, it's like it could be like if we move to a meta where you're seeing a lot more people playing 2 cost, 3 cost, you will see people taking those PTA shields out for earthquakes.
That's true.
Honestly,
That's definitely true.
Earthquakes would just be better.
Okay, I see your point. Yeah,
because it's instant.
Or Laurels.
Yeah.
You set your
It's
Earthquake
just-
to pretend it's the shield, and then
Earth-
next turn just flip it and break their 3-drop and have them cry.
yeah.
No, I don't know. I think yeah.
the ultimate thing here, from all the runes though, drawing cards is good, and destroying cards is good. And that's the top 5 list.
I mean, how specific
Yeah.
cards to destroy? Yeah.
That's what I find interesting too. Is like we don't see Chariot in here. We don't see Stars in here. We don't see
Really?
Because those are very niche
They're
cards.
not there at the meta yet.
Chariot is so bad.
Chariot's very good if you have something unique. Like I played Chariot in Majesty Ramp because I just wait a turn and then go bam Chariot. You can't deal with Majesty. Majesty hits board. Your only way to deal with it now is Earthquake and Laurels.
So I did have one card I really wanted to put in my top 5, but I haven't tested it. I want to give a shout out to Obel. Obel, I think, will get
Carry on Zobel.
Yeah, it got buffed to a 1 cost.
Play. I think we'll see play, see a lot more draw. I think it's really good.
What does it do again? I forget.
When Celestial dies in battle.
Celestial
Draw a
destroyed this
card.
turn.
It's specifically
I
in
think it's a cool
battle.
draw option for Swarm decks.
It's a good option for Swarm decks. Penterror will run it because you're just crashing all over the place.
So
And then, like,
the only
That's fine.
reason it might not see play is because you're drawing those cards during your battle phase or during a battle phase. So unless it's your opponent's battle phase where they have control over the effect, because let's say you go into battle phase, like your opponent goes battle phase and you have a bunch of things they're going to destroy, you Charon so that they can attack. They can just stop attacking if they feel like that's relevant.
Well, I mean,
it's the
that's
max
why-
C
like,
problem.
Here's my counterpoint to it. It doesn't matter if you draw if you just stop your opponent from actually answering your board though, and now you get the priority pass to you.
Yeah,
it's kind of like max C.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Max C-
It's the max C conundrum. It's giving the control to your opponent can sometimes
Max C.
no, because max C
Yeah,
is like giving your opponent the control to be like I can push and win here versus do I let you take advantage? It kind of muddles things where it's like max C can be really powerful. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, max C is insanely powerful because everyone's trying to special, but can you like wait a turn to attack right now in Elestrals? Most of the time, if you're an attacking deck, you kind of can because it means you have bigger attack stat than your opponent.
Yeah.
I counterpoint to that.
Like the thing is, you can get at least 1 draw off of Obels because you can activate it on the attack and they can't stop attack.
That's right. That's
So
a
you'll
1
get
for 1.
1.
Since
What were you saying, Jacob?
Since it's 1 now, I think that makes it way more viable than 2 because 1 for replacing itself isn't too bad, and if you can just stop your opponent from attacking. And I think right now it isn't too viable because there isn't too much swarm, but I just imagine if you get a wide board, it doesn't matter. Even if your opponent has something big out, as long as you have something big to respond to it and your opponent just has to stop attacking to not give you advantage, you still can do stuff. You can still respond. So I think it's a good option for those sorts of decks to have.
It's a good card.
Is
It's
Obel
definitely
destroyed in combat or is this destruction in general?
good. During combat.
It's during the combat step. It's step
Destroyed
specific,
in
yeah.
battle.
In
you
battle,
can draw a
in
card.
battle, okay. So you'll see it like in just in Hydrate decks and Foamy decks.
I've seen it in Pentarrow decks, yeah.
No,
Yeah, Penterror and anything that runs foamies because you can plus off of it, and they're like, if you can either your hand set up and your opponent's like, I don't want to attack into your foamy and just give you tons of draws, or you like, at one point I guess you could just like Pajaris is ridiculous. You just crash. You technically, I think you're drawing 3 or 4 cards off of
You're
one
drawing.
cost card.
You're probably drawing 2, maybe 3.
Yeah,
Um,
1, 2,
the-
1, 2. You're drawing 3.
But you
You're drawing
are
3 max.
relying on your opponent to have a specific board state to have that work for you. So
Yeah.
late game, it's going to be a super efficient draw engine for like the crazy just kind of crash turns that you might have. Early game, it's almost useless because at early game, it's going to be a 1 cost draw, 1 counter rune. So it's like almost early game a Jar Agree, which is really slow.
Yeah.
But late
I miss
game, if you
jars.
set up for it or your opponent's kind of in a weird spot, you can take advantage of it and draw 3-4 cards. But that's going to
So-
be the exception, and hoping your opponent does something, which makes it a little bit harder to use.
That's what we're saying, guys. It's like there's a lot of cards that we could sit here and talk about for 400 years that make and build off decks and stuff like that. I genuinely think that if it's colorless, it's gonna see play.
This was a first remake,
it's-
honestly, to some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just because it's so versatile.
Waiting on the colorless elestrals.
Yeah.
Waiting on them.
Dan, get on that, please. Thank you.
Get on that, Dan. So we can just put them in every deck.
I said
Please,
it's
no.
at a certain point, and before in the Empirix nerf, he was just colorless. Like,
yeah,
he was.
Yeah.
We-
And it made
well,
it a
you
little
had to
too
run
strong.
the fires just to make it.
Yeah, to expend him.
Yeah, you
Oh,
run
yeah,
one
you run
fire so
so
you get it
fast.
back. Like that's
Yeah,
such a
like-
small cost.
It's not a cost.
But yeah, we
Which is
are
funny because-
actually.
Chant it, you could miss a chant on the field, and even if it went to the graveyard, its effect would
Yep.
still activate.
It's
But we are coming up on 2 hours. We went through both of our lists. So I think that's a good stopping
realize.
point. We kind of
Yeah.
went through everything. 2 hours is a good episode length. So I guess we should probably start closing out here. Again, removal, draw cards, top tier. Everything else is good, but could be better. But I guess let's kind of sound off. So on my screen, I had Red Baron on top, then Moxie, then Eagle, then me. So if Baron wants to start his little sign off, and then we'll go Baron, Moxie, Eagle, me.
Well, not much to say. I appreciate everybody looking out. And I'll fly at you in the next video.
Moxie, outro.
oh
go.
man, oh hi. You guys can tell I'm totally
Yeah,
awake.
Moxie.
I've destroyed everything. Crap. Bye. It's good talking to you. I'll see you guys later.
Alright, and it's been fun being there. I thought it was a lot of fun discussing these lists, seeing the different perspectives as someone who likes to kind of discuss the game to help everyone just kind of get a good overall perspective and learn from it. This has been great. So if you kind of want more of that, definitely check out my channel as I've got a lot of great and analytical content about elestrals, from deck profiles, gameplay, to just card discussions. So if that interests you, check that out on top of just checking everyone else out, because we're all amazing people.
See,
Yeah,
that's
we
how
should all
you
have-
shill. Moxie, Baron, you failed.
I know.
So
They'll be in
yeah,
the description, I assume.
I
We're
got
just
it.
gonna put them there.
All of our links, all of our video
Yeah, in
links
the
will be in the
description.
description.
yeah, everyone will be added down in the description when this goes
Trying to
live.
get 50.
Yo, yeah, all
Everybody-
202 of Wirtz's subscribers. Go check me out.
220
I
Yeah,
upload once a month.
226 right now.
You're at 226?
226, yeah.
I have yet become an official
Yeah. Baron doesn't have 100.
Go
Give him
sub to
100.
Baron,
Please,
and then
guys,
when you're
check
done
out
subbing to Baron, check
Yeah,
my
go
channel
check
too
out
and sub to
Baron.
me if you haven't already.
Yeah.
But
Go
yeah,
Baron.
so
My thumbnails are looking good now.
I feel like if most of you are watching this, you've checked out Words, Moxie, and I, so go check out Baron
Yeah,
as well.
go
Yeah,
check Baron.
go check Baron. Give him some subs. If he's not at 100 subs by the end of this year, shame on you.
And my birthday is January 2nd, so I should definitely have him by then.
Give him a birthday gift. Subs are free. Get him to 100, then take your sub away. But yeah, I think we're at the end there. Thank you guys for coming on. We do these when we get people to do these, and I hope everyone has a great night or day, whatever time of day it is. I don't know when this is going live, but it's probably going live on a Sunday. So have a good rest of your week, and Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, and whatever other holidays you spend for the year. Hopefully we have
Happy
another
holidays.
one of these by the end of the year, but it's hectic with the holidays. So everyone, you have a great one. Enjoy your New Year's, and I'll see
Happy
you in the next
holidays.
one.
Bye, guys.